It's New Year's Eve. One of the great holidays of the year. New Year's Eve is. I never really do anything all that exciting on New Year's Eve. I never really get too crazy on New Year's Eve, but I always look forward to it and I always enjoy it. It's like, kind of that bookend with Christmas as far as winter break goes. Tomorrow will be New Year's Day, one of the great lazy days on the calendar. Always look forward to that. And then it's Thursday. It's January 2nd. And man, it's back to the grind. Like, the holiday is officially over. Tomorrow is the final day. The kids go back to school on Thursday. We all get back into our regular grind. It's all, whatever winter break was for you. And it's a lot of things to a lot of, it's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Everybody's got their own approach to winter break and gets different amounts of time off, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever it was to you, it's over on Thursday. Like, tomorrow's the last day. So New Year's Eve has this like nice vibe where like tomorrow's the Sunday of winter break, right? Like tomorrow, like New Year's Day is the Sunday of winter break where like you relax, you take it easy. It's a lazy day, but you got to get back on it, get back on the horse the next day. And that's what tomorrow is. Today is the Saturday of winter break. It's New Year's Eve. We'll party tonight. We'll have a lot of fun, have a good time, and get real lazy with it tomorrow. But here on the Morning Pit, we will recap 2024. I've got the 5. I just want to make sure I only wrote down 5 and didn't end up with like 6 or 7. We've got the 5 biggest sports stories in Pitt athletics from 2024. It was an interesting year. Some major changes. Certainly in the sports of college athletics, but also at the University of Pittsburgh in particular. We won't even get into the big picture stuff with college athletics and the House settlement and roster limits and NIL and revenue sharing and all those things. We'll just stick to the biggest Pitt stories because those 5 are big enough on their own. They're not all good. As a matter of fact, one is good, but it gets overshadowed by another one, which is bad. And another one is sort of remains to be seen if it's good or not. So, can't say it was a great year in Pitt athletics in terms of high achievements, but we will still talk about it anyway. I hope I don't bring you down. I hope I don't get you to start drinking already today. Maybe we should have. Maybe we should have had a New Year's Eve shot here on the Morning Pit just to get the day started, right? I mean, can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning, right? We're not going to do it here, though. What we are going to do is talk about the 5 biggest Pitt sports stories of 2024. So like this video and subscribe. It's the Morning Pitt New Year's Eve edition here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Should have had a party, like something like that. I made my lips itchy. Should have had something, a party hat or streamers or something like maybe a... How do I get the balloons to fall? Is it 2 thumbs up? No? 2 thumbs up. Will that get the balloons to fall? Oh, fireworks. There we go. That's a good New Year's Eve celebration. We sent the fireworks. What about the 2 peace signs? Is that... Oh, that's confetti. That's cool. What was... I forgot how I got the balloons to fall. No? This is the laser show, I think, right? Yeah. What was the balloons? Okay signs? No. 1 piece sign? How about that? No, nothing? Peace sign? There's the balloons. Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. We got our New Year's Eve balloons. All right. 5 biggest Pitt sports stories of 2024. I'm not going to necessarily list these in order, but they'll be in a certain kind of order, more or less chronological, but not entirely chronological. One of the biggest Pitt sports stories of 2024 was Pitt basketball missing the NCAA tournament. This was a big story because Pitt basketball ended up being pretty good and showing themselves to be pretty good. And it became a national topic for their exclusion from the NCAA tournament. They were the team that were held up every time there was almost every time there was an upset in the actual NCAA tournament. Pitt got mentioned as, well, this is what, you left out Pittsburgh, and you put in this team and you see what happened. They got bounced in the first round. Jay Billis and the like often use Pitt as the reference point for the NCAA tournament selection committee's failures this season, and shortcomings in how they chose the tournament field this year. But more locally, it was interesting because of the impact it had on the Pitt basketball program. There was a great amount of disappointment. I think they would be the first to say that they, bear some responsibility. There were plenty of games they could have won that they did not win. That if they had taken care of business in just one or two of those, most specifically the non-conference game against Missouri, which ended up being a home loss, and Missouri ended up being a bad team, that winning one game here or there that they had lost would have likely gotten them into the NCAA tournament. So they'd be the first to admit that they had a fair amount of culpability in their exclusion from the tournament field. But at the same time, it's interesting to see the fallout from that snub, because the result is what we've seen, and we've talked about it a decent amount. I think we talked about it quite a bit actually on the message boards. We talked about it, on these videos, talking about the end of Pitt's non-conference schedule this year. And when you compare the non-conference resume from last year to this year, first of all, record-wise, heading into the main ACC play, last year Pitt was 9-3. This year they're 10-2. At the end of the non-conference last year, Pitt was 37 in the net rankings. At the end of the non-conference this year, they were number 11. Perhaps most relevant, because there was so much time and conversation spent on strength of schedule, Pitt's net strength of schedule last year at the end of the non-conference was 306. This year at the end of the non-conference, it was 58. The net non-conference strength of schedule, because again, there was an ACC game thrown in there. Last year, at the end of the non-conference schedule, the net non-conference strength of schedule was 343. This year, it was 52. At the end of the non-conference last year, Pitt had played one quad one game and they lost. This year, they've played three. Even though they were only 1-2 in those three games, they still played them. And we saw last year the committee rewarded teams that played more of those challenging games. And so, was it a huge Pitt sports story that Pitt got left out of the NCAA tournament? No, it was a big story. It wasn't like a gigantic story, but I think it became more relevant because of how it impacted Jeff Capel's approach to this season, how it changed what he did and how he went about it. And largely the biggest difference is that they added the Ohio State game. That was the response game to getting left out of the NCAA tournament, and it's worked. They won the game. Obviously, that was huge. You got to win on the road. That was a monster game and a monster opportunity, and they took advantage of it. But I think that is one of the biggest Pitt sports stories of the year, because not just of what it meant for last year and how it captivated us, in the bubble run up to Selection Sunday, but also because of the fallout going forward. Another one of the biggest Pitt sports stories, and I'm going to bounce around. I said I was going to go chronologically. I'm not entirely going to do that, but the volleyball run. The Pitt volleyball team being legitimately the best team in the country basically all season long. I don't think they went wire to wire ranked number one. I apologize if they did, and I'm misstating that. But they were number one for most of the season. And they were widely considered the best team in the country for most of the season. And they were awarded, rightfully so, the number one overall seed after losing just one game in the regular season. All the sweeps, all the individual accolades, all the crushing victories. They just killed it this year. Till they ran into Louisville on Louisville's home court in the Final Four. And they gave up the reverse sweep. They won the first set, lost the next three, and got bounced from the NCAA tournament. A major disappointment, as Pitt was on the verge of claiming its 12th team national championship in school history. 9 in football, 2 in men's basketball, and a potential to add 1 in women's volleyball. Now, they would have had to beat Penn State in the national championship game, so Louisville wasn't the final big boss, but it was a pretty big one. And yeah, it's always tough to beat a team 3 times in the season. Pitt had already beaten Louisville twice, but this Pitt team was special. They had special talent, they had special players, they had special chemistry. Everything was clicking for this team. And it's not to say they can't be good again next year, but this team was supposed to do it. This was supposed to be the one that got it done. Just like the 2008-09 men's basketball team was supposed to be the one that reached the Final Four. And they fell short. Scotty Reynolds got them. Andrew DeBeers got the Pitt volleyball team. And, there have been times over the years where I've said a team choked. The NCAA tournament lost to Butler. I think it was a choke. I think that team choked that game away. I'm hesitant to use it to apply to Pitt volleyball this year in their loss in the Final Four, partially because they reached the Final Four. Now, a team of Pitt's caliber had expectations to get further than the Final Four. Like, that's not enough. That alone is not a success. But when you get to that point, I'm hesitant to say you choked because everybody at that stage is really, really good. You are legitimate. I mean, it was 4 number 1 seeds. Like the best of the best advanced. Chalk held, and you had 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. And so everybody there entered the tournament expecting to win a national championship, like legitimately expecting to win a national championship. Not just like everybody comes in thinking they're all going to win. Like those 4 teams came in saying, we are going to win the national championship. Somebody had to lose. Obviously, 3 out of the 4 had to lose. And while it was disappointing that Pitt lost, and it was disappointing in the way that they lost, when the win was there for them to take. They won the first set, and I thought all the momentum was theirs. And they should have won the third set. The third set is the one that will haunt them, and it should. I hesitate to say choked because you got to the Final Four where everybody is really good. And it just so happens you faced the team on their home court and they got the better of you. Pitt has a lot of great players coming back next year. They should be very good again. They've got some big pieces to fill, some big holes to fill for sure. They should be very good again. But that was a disappointing one. That one hurt. That was a pretty rough loss when Pitt lost in the Final Four this year. All right, next big sports story. The change in athletic director. This is probably the biggest Pitt sports story of the year, but the next 2 kind of go together, so I'm going to say them all. I'm saving those 2 for last. We'll say this one is number 3, but it probably was the biggest story in Pitt sports this year. The change from Heather Lyke, who had been at Pitt for 7 years, to Alan Green, who comes in from Tennessee, has been the athletic director at a number of different places, most notably Auburn, but has spent time in, I think, 3 different SEC schools. He's got experience at Notre Dame. I mean, like, this is a guy who knows his way around big-time athletics. But more, the book is out on Alan Green and the job he's going to do. More relevant, or what we know, is what it means for Heather Lyke to be gone. And Heather Lyke, we spent plenty of time talking about Heather Lyke over the years, and certainly in the time leading up to and after her firing. Heather Lyke oversaw a lot of success in Pitt athletics. Volleyball team had a lot of success. Football team won an ACC championship. Jeff Capel finally turned it around and reached the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. I think Keith Gavin was a pretty solid hire for the wrestling program. Soccer has ascended, and she hired one of those 2 coaches. But there were also some pretty major holes in her administration of the athletic department. A reluctance to embrace NIL, to me, was chief among them. In addition to little things here and there, different HR issues and different sort of priorities, and maybe, there needed to be improvements to the Olympic sports facilities. Did they need to be $300 million or $500 million or whatever they're spending on Victory Heights? I'm not so sure. That's a question that probably people smarter than me can answer. But it did seem like, well, it seems, obviously from the outcome, from the result, that Joan Gable, the Pitt chancellor, didn't feel like Heather Lyke was really well positioned to lead Pitt's athletic department into this new era of Pitt sports. Everyone, the general consensus I've gotten from a lot of people is that everybody could see that NIL and the House settlement were coming, and Pitt was behind. Pitt was slow in getting on board. Pitt was slow to embrace those things and support those things and do everything they could to encourage and help grow those efforts. And I think that's part of the reason why a change was made. But regardless of why it happened, it's a huge story. because you now have new leadership in the athletic department at a crucial point, a true turning point in college athletics. And Alan Green will be the man shepherding Pitt through that turning point. All right. Our next big Pitt story, the 2024 five biggest stories of the year in Pitt athletics. Pitt's 7-0 start to the 2024 football season and everything that goes with that. The emergence of Eli Holstein, the emergence of Desmond Reed, Cade Bell's offense clicking, the defense playing well. Down 3 scores at Cincinnati in the final 20 minutes, they come back and win that game. Down 10 points in the final 5 minutes against West Virginia, backyard brawl for the ages, they come back and win that game. They go to North Carolina, a place they have literally never won. They win that game. They get 5 interceptions against Kyle McCord in Syracuse, including 3 pick sixes to win that game. Pitt is being talked about as a fringe college football playoff team, a legitimate contender for the ACC championship, a top 20 team, borderline top 15. Should their resume get them in better? Where should they be? Why are they not getting more respect? All of these different things. And we know what happened after it. We'll get to that. But for those 7 games, those 8 weeks, however many it was, for a decent portion of them, because it didn't start after the Kent State game, it started a little bit later, people were talking about Pitt. Pitt was relevant on the college football scene. I'm not even giving a thumbs up. How did it think? I guess my computer just agreed with me. The people were talking about Pitt. People, Pitt was relevant on the national college football scene during that stretch. And, it's the first 7-0 stretch that I've ever covered. The first time they've ever gone undefeated in the non-conference. First time since they joined the Big East way back when. Their first 7-0 start in 40 years. Their first 4-0 start. Their first 5-0 start. Their first 6-0 start in the last 40-plus years. It was remarkable. And it was the kind of thing that you and I thought we probably would never see. That sort of unprecedented streak of success led by this breakout quarterback and this dynamic all-purpose weapon at running back and this defense that was really, showing some playmakers emerging, and these linebackers were actually living up to it. Everything was going well. That was a huge story. And unfortunately, it got eclipsed by our final big story of 2024. Maybe the biggest outside of the athletic director change. 6-game losing streak to close the season. 7 games, it's still, 7 games are more than 6, right? If you won 7 games and you lost 6, you won more than you lost. And so should a 6-game losing streak outweigh a 7-game winning streak? Numbers-wise, no. But when the 7-game winning streak is to open the season and the 6-game losing streak is to close the season, yes. And if it had gone the other way, if Pitt had started 0-6 and finished on a 7-0 streak, we'd probably be having a different kind of conversation right now. We'd probably be having there'd be a different tenor to the talk. There would still be a lot of anger and disappointment. But on this season, at least, if they had closed on a 7-game winning streak, they would have beaten Clemson, SMU, and Louisville, in addition to winning their bowl game. So there would be a different vibe to everything we're talking about, a different tone to what we're talking about here. But that's not how it went down. How it went down is that Pitt started 7-0, and then they got embarrassed at SMU. They blew a winnable game against Virginia. They blew a winnable game against Clemson. They got more or less pushed around at Louisville. And then they blew a winnable game at Boston College. And even when they were 7-0, even when they were 5-0 and the offense was still going well, I never sat back and said, I think this team's going to go 12-0. I remember saying, maybe before the Syracuse game or the Boston or Virginia game or Cal game, I forget which one. One of those earlier games, after they were 5-0, 6-0, I said, look, at some point, I wrote this on the message board. At some point, Pitt's going to lose a game, probably more than one. People are like, boo, what's wrong with you? Why would you say that? I just, reality. I think they're going to lose a game at some point. They're going to lose a few games at some point. I don't think they're good enough to be 12-0, but they've staked themselves a pretty good position by winning the first 7 games. Never, ever did I imagine that they would lose the next 6. And the only people among us who actually imagined that they would lose the next 6 or considered it a real possibility were people who, I won't even say it. But I mean, like, you know. The narrative has already been decided for some folks. I think most of us, I remember talking with a national reporter who covers the ACC, and he was like, I think 9-3 has got to be the floor for this program. I don't see them doing worse than 9-3 this year. And I said, hey, from your lips to God's ears, man. Well, and it's disappointing. It's majorly disappointing. And like, they never needed to go 12-0. They were never going to go 12-0, but there was no reason to lose to Virginia. There was no reason to lose to Boston College. And quite frankly, with how the game played out, they should have beaten Clemson. And if you just take 2 out of those 3, you're 9-3 in the regular season. Playing in a better game, a better bowl game than Detroit, playing a better opponent than Toledo. And so maybe it doesn't change the outcome there, but 9-4 compared to 7-6, where you're not on a 6-game losing streak, that's better. And unfortunately, what was shaping up to be the best Pitt football season in 40 years is now one of the worst of the last 40 years. It really is. Like, that 6-game losing streak, just one win somewhere in there would have changed this. But because they lost every single one, it has overshadowed what they did in the first 7. And I've always been the one that said it doesn't overshadow. It doesn't overshadow. They still accomplished what they did in the first 7. And we'll probably come back to that and say that a lot when we're making our predictions for 2025. That like, oh, this team showed what they can be when everybody's healthy and everything's rolling and this and that. But the reality is, for right now, that 6-game losing streak overshadows the 7-game winning streak. It does. And that's a shame, because Pitt played well in those 7 games. They accomplished something in those 7 games. They made history in those 7 games. And then they made history in the next 6. And not the kind of history you want to make. And I don't know what the answer is coming out of it. Maybe that'll be part of our New Year's resolution when we discuss 2025 in a couple days. But that was a tough pill to swallow, to finish on a 6-game losing streak. And coming out of last year, I'm probably going to go too far down this road, but coming out of 2023, there was an easy self-examination to do. You needed to fix the offense. This year, I feel like the questions are almost harder. Of why did your team fall apart like this and collapse for a 6-game losing streak? It's not as easy as just, well, Cignetti sucks. It's not that easy this year. I don't know what the answers are. I don't know what answers they'll come up with. I don't even know if they're what questions they're asking, or if they're asking the right questions. But they need to figure something out, because 2025 grew in significance, in importance, and in weight every time they lost a game. And they all kept piling up, and the importance of 2025 just kept growing. Now we'll see where they go from here. Here's where I want you to go from here. I want you to like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget, we will have no Morning Pitt tomorrow. It's New Year's Day. Enjoy it. We will have no live show tomorrow night. It's New Year's Day. Enjoy it. But we will be back on Thursday, January 2nd, for our first Morning Pitt of 2025. I can't wait. I'm excited to jump into this new year. I think it's going to be a great one, just in lots of different ways. I don't know if it's going to be a great one for Pitt sports or not, but for you, for me, for your family, your loved ones, your friends, I hope for all of us, it's a great year. So finish it out well. Enjoy New Year's Eve. Happy New Year to you, and we will catch up with you on Thursday for the Morning Pitt. First one of 2025 right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.